Honorable Chancellor Sir Shri Kamal Kishorji Kadam, Chairman MGM Trust, Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Shashank Dalvi, Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Nitin Kadam. The schedule for today's program, it will begin with the note, that is the welcome address and the highlights for the National Education Policy by Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Shashank Dalvi sir, followed by the introduction to the speaker by Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Nitin Kadam, followed by the speech by Professor Ved Prakash ji, followed by the question answer discussion, followed by the Chancellor's presidential address, and then we'll be concluding it with a vote of thanks and closing remarks by Dr. Parinita Samant, Joint Controller of Examination. I request all the participants, if you have any queries, to put it down on the chat box. We'll be considering it during the question answer session after Sir's talk, that is after Professor Ved Prakash's talk. I now invite Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Shashank Dalvi sir to give the welcome address and the highlights on the National Education Policy 2020. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, madam. On the occasion of this national webinar on National Education Policy 2020, I welcome Professor Ved Prakash ji, former University Grant Commission President for the webinar, Shri Kamal Kishorji Kadam, Chancellor of MGM, Chairman MGM, moderator for the webinar, Dr. Nitin Kadam, all the mics. I request mics, please mute your mics.
COVID-19.
MGM University Aurangabad, Chairman, MGM Trust, Dr. Sudhir Kadam sir, former Vice Chancellor MGM IHS, various specialists. I am happy to say that many of the Vice Chancellors have joined and are joining. I will like to mention and welcome Professor Chandrasekhar Shetty from Chunchungiri University, former VC of Rajiv Gandhi, Dr. Dilip Maisekar from MHS Nashik, Professor Vivek Savji from KLE, Professor N.J. Pawar from DY Patil Kolhapur, Professor Shirish Patil from Mumbai, Professor V.M. Jairaj from Pravra Institute of Medical Sciences Loni, Professor Sudhir Gavane from MGM Aurangabad, Dr. P.H. Shingare sir, former Director of Medical Education, Dr. G.S. Nar Shetty, Dr. Bora, Deans of various medical colleges. As such, this is the third national education policy after independence in our country. If we see the background of the national education policies in our country, the first national policy on education that has come into existence in 1968, very much recognized Kothari Commission. 20 years after that, the second national policy on education has come into existence, 1986, which has been amended in 1992. In between 1968 to 1986, some other constitutional changes that has been occurred, and the education has been shifted to the concurrent list in 1976. Third national education policy, that is the present, that is after 34 years from the second national education policy. And it has been based on two reports, TSR Subramanian Committee report, and the major report is of K. Kasturirangan Committee report. One of the important feature of this particular committee and the policy is that the maximum interactions with all the stakeholders from all the corners of the country that has been carried out. Nearly 2 lakh representations have come, and those have taken into consideration while devising the policy. And all the good features are being included in this particular policy. The principles underlying this particular policy, it recognizes, identifies, fostering the unique capability of each student. The aim of the policy is to make education system holistic and multidisciplinary. Flexibility and autonomy are the main pillars on which this particular policy has been based. It has been aligned to the needs of 21st century. While devising this policy, 2030 Sustainable Development Goals given by UN, those are being considered. It aims to transform India's education system by 2040. So the life of policy is surely 20 years, and even it has been supposed that it can be extended up to 10 years more. National education policy in this multilingualism is promoted. The original 3-language policy has also been kept constant, and the power of languages. The policy respect for diversity and also respect for the local context at each university, at each institute. Think globally and act locally. That is the major phenomena around which this policy is there. The extensive use of technology is implied in the policy. It emphasizes on creativity, conceptual understanding, and critical thinking. In the policy, the regulatory framework, it is said that it will be light but tight. It is very interesting to hear. To raise public investment in the policy, the aim is from present 4.3% to 6%. Right from school education, where the major important change have occurred, ensuring universal access to school education, 100% gross enrollment ratio by 2030, that is the aim. Focusing on early childhood care. Previously, childhood care usually starts at the age of 6 years, and the students can get admission directly into the first standard. But now, right from 3rd year onwards, the early childhood education will start. Previously also this was there in the urban areas through playgroup, junior KG, senior KG. In the rural areas and particularly in the ICDS scheme, this non-formal education, Anganwadis and all those that was existing, but that was there in the domain of social welfare department. Now it has come to the educational sector. Reducing the dropouts, also one of the important objectives of the policy. Vocational education, from class 6 onwards only, it has to be started. As all these new phenomenon and the principles are embedded in the policy, teachers training in that direction is of utmost importance, and for that investing in teachers training, that has been also decided. Teaching up to grade 5, mother tongue or in the regional language, that is implied. The curriculum and the pedagogy that has been revised into 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system instead of 10 plus 2. The previous academic structure that everybody is aware, that is from 6 to 16, 10 up to 10th class, and then 11th and 12th, 16 to 18 years. Instead of that, now right from 3 years onwards, it will start. The class 1 and 2 that has been merged into it, and that is up to 8 years, and that is called as foundational course. Next, class 3 to 5, that is preparatory. In class 6 to 8, that is the middle. Class 9 to 12, that is secondary. In class 9 to 10, again 9 to 10, and after 10, the student can leave and again rejoin in 11 and 12. So that flexibility in the entry-exit option has been kept. And this particular structure, semester system is also observed in the school education that is employed. Coming to the main, that is the higher education, what are the changes? Gross enrollment ratio, it is 26.3%. That has to be increased to 50% by 2035. The disciplinary barriers, those are to be broken, and multidisciplinary, health university, engineering university, the law university, such, those will disappear now. And all discipline in single campus, multidisciplinary campus of the universities. That is the objective. No streams anymore. Otherwise, in the 11th and 12th, that is the common question, which stream you are taking? Art, but that way, flexibility to choose subjects at level of profession.
Hello.
Major and minor, allow Indian universities to build campuses abroad, pave the way for top universities, multiple entry and exit points,
केवल दोबारा छोड़ के दोबारा देखने का
National Testing Agency is being to higher education institutes. Till now, all the professional courses, we are taking the entrance examinations and admissions are being done on the basis of entrance examinations marks. Now for all the courses, the admissions will be done on the National Testing Agency. For the graduation, 3-year option and 4-year option is there. At each year you can leave and again you can rejoin after some time. If some problem is there for some students, this flexibility and entry and exit points have been kept. The first year, that has been called as a certificate, second year as a diploma, third year as a degree graduate, and for employment purpose, this 3-year graduationship is sufficient. The fourth year research graduate, and all these, that will be the credit transfer, credit bank, you can accumulate the credits and those can be reused for completion of your education. Affiliation of colleges, that has to be phased out in 15 years. No affiliating institutions. The colleges will be given autonomy. Autonomy will be given into the number of stages. Initially academic autonomy, then administrative autonomy and the financial autonomy. Multidisciplinary education and research institutes will come. All the institutions will be restructured and the consolidation will occur. The universities as such will be of 3 types. Either where the only research is predominating, research intensive, research and teaching, both, and the teaching intensive, autonomous colleges. In the silent teachers, establishment of National Education Technology Forum. For the research, National Research Foundation will come into existence. Single body which will look after the and the high quality of the research, peer-reviewed research, and more stress on indigenous research, that will be considered. The MPhil course will be discontinued. Single regulatory authority will come into existence, Higher Education Commission. But 2 professions are excluded from this, the medical and the legal. Public and private higher education institution will be governed by regulation, accreditation, and academic standards. For regulation, National Higher Education Regulatory Council. For standard setting, General Education Council. So whatever the councils which are existing now, so those will perform this particular work of standard setting. Then funding, that will look after Higher Education Grant Council, and the NAC will do the work of National NAP 2020 contributing to an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all. It is aimed to India superpower in field of education. I am aware that we all are interested to hear Professor Ved Prakash ji, and so I will conclude here with the quote of our role model, Mahatma Gandhi. By education, I mean an all-round drawing of the best in child and man in body, mind and spirit. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the overview and the highlights on the National Education Policy 2020. I now invite Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Nitin Kadam to introduce our speaker, Professor Ved Prakash ji, former UGC Chairman. Welcome, sir.
And good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the webinar on New Education Policy 2020 for higher education. It is said that a nation is shaped within the walls of a classroom. This is the reason the education policy of any nation is monitored very seriously and minutely by the world. A robust education policy helps in achieving full human potentials and for national development. But very importantly, it is also linked to the global economy and world peace. As all of us are aware about that the aims of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations are to end poverty, protect planet, prosperity, global peace and propagation of non-violence by 2030. And this was also a dream of our father of nation, Mahatma Gandhi ji, who saw this dream somewhere 72 years back. Target 4.7 of the SDG highlights very clearly the role of education in achieving these goals. Today, we are gathered here to discuss and deliberate upon the Education Policy 2020 in the presence of eminent and accomplished individuals. It gives me a great pleasure in introducing today's keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Ved Prakash ji. His academic career has been a very interesting, exemplary and impressive. Sir is a doctorate in education. He was awarded the US Fulbright Postdoctoral Fellowship from Michigan State University. He was a visiting faculty at University of Windsor, Canada and Harvard University International Development. Sir was also a consultant to World Bank for Nepalese Council of Higher Education. Professor Ved Prakash is a luminary in the field of education policy, education planning and administration, and has authored several books and more than 150 publications are at his credit. His dedicated work, spanning 4 decades, includes working at grassroots level up to representing India at the highest level of education deliberation with an aim to only one aim, that is to elevate the levels of education in our country. Sir has several prestigious positions, but I'll just name few, namely the Advisor Planning Commission of Government of India, Director National University of Education, Planning and Administration, Chairman National Council of Teachers Education, and Chairperson of University Grant Commission, which is the apex body of education in our country. It is a privilege and honor for me to welcome Professor Dr. Ved Prakash. Thank you very much, sir, and I request you to kindly share your views on new education policy. Over to Professor Dr. Ved Prakash ji. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Nitin Kadam, for your kind words. Esteemed Shri Kamal Kishore Kadamji, former Minister of Education of the state of Maharashtra and the chairman of the MGM Institute of Health Sciences. Respected Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Kadam, my very valued colleague and friend, Professor Shashank Dalvi, the Vice Chancellor of this prestigious university, Dr. Rita, the coordinator of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, other honorable Vice Chancellors who have joined us today in this webinar wherein we are going to deliver 20 and esteemed participants from different institutions and from different parts of the country. A very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I would like to express my very sincere thanks to the Honorable Chancellor, Pro Chancellor and the Vice Chancellor for giving me this opportunity to be with you this afternoon when we are going to reflect on the new national education policy. Policy is a very important document, and we have got this policy after a long gap of 34 years. And therefore, regardless of our area of specialization, we must read every word of it and try to understand implication of every statement of intent that the policy contains. This is one message that I would like to share with you. And as an institute of higher learning, MGM Institute of Health Sciences, I think collective aspect of policy and having regard to the exist. I mean, one of our large campus is in the city of Aurangabad. The another one is in Navi Mumbai. To make that policy is a statement of intent. It guides our decisions and ensure consistency in decision making. It also helps us achieve rational outcome. When I'm asking you to analyze this policy individually and institutionally, I think we need to see that the policy is not detrimental to the interest of the society. A lot of hype has been created about this policy on social media. But I think we should look into every statement of intent, whether or not they are mutually contradicting each other, whether it should reflect the objectives in an unambiguous term, and the language of the policy actually. So policies usually are made on the basis of the needs of the society. And when we charter our own path, many a time we look up for the best practices around us. But identify the practices that seem to be, we need to identify practices that seem to be workable in our own context. And which is why I have specifically said that having regard to the physical and social conditions of our institutions, wherever they are located, I think we need to identify the guiding principles. Something which will work in Aurangabad might not work in the city of Navi Mumbai. And the practices which are inclusive in nature. If you analyze the policy documents across the world, you will find that there are 4 different approaches of formulating the policy. One is the spurious approach, wherein you use the flowery language, raise questions, but come out with answers that are easy to manipulate. The second approach could be the unprincipled approach, wherein people select questions and come out with answers which suit the dispensation. People in power might raise only limited questions. The third approach could be the typical administrative approach, wherein you raise all possible questions but provide answers and make recommendations, knowing well that neither the political will of the country nor the economy are going to support it. And the fourth approach is the genuine approach, wherein we raise all possible questions, find answers based on empirical evidences which are in sync with the harsh realities, and then extend honest supports to make them happen. Now, I would like to sum up this part of my address and say that how well have we designed the national education policy in our own context will depend upon how well we understand it and how well we orient the policy implementers. Because in our profession, policy is made by somebody and policy is implemented by another set of people. So how well we orient the policy implementers is going to be of paramount significance, and how well we take the states on board and how well we finance our efforts. It's heartening to note, indeed, like Professor Dalvi was saying a little while ago, that we have come up with the new national education policy after a gap of 34 years. It has created some kind of euphoria for two reasons actually, according to me. Partly because it has raised the aspirations of the people, and partly due to ostentatious presentation. It has made a couple of notable structural changes, but there remains certain areas where the proposed outlines leave scope for misapprehensions. Professor Dalvi has talked to us. I'm not going to go into that this is the third policy. But if you look into the basis of the earlier policy and the basis of this present policy, how have we formulated, there's a lot of difference. Let us not spend time on that. Now, this policy, initial work was started off in 2014, and now after a lot of deliberations and discussions at different levels, we have come up. We constituted a 4-member committee under the chairmanship of TSR Subramaniam. Another committee was constituted under the chairmanship of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and Dr. Kasturi Rangan submitted the report, which was a 477-page report, which has been subsequently condensed by the ministry into 63 pages. So we have this 63-page report with us, which was released by the Ministry of Human Resource Development on 26 July 2020. It has talked about the development of good human beings capable of rational thoughts, etc., etc., promoting flexibility and equity, transforming Bharat into a Shresth Bharat, into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing access to high quality education for all. What I propose to do, I am not going to discuss in detail about the implications of the structural changes which have been proposed in the policy because of the paucity of time. I'm going to spend more time on higher education because I received a mail from the registrar of the university, and I did discuss it with Professor Dalvi as well, that since we are an institution of higher learning, so let us spend little more time on higher education. But briefly, I will touch upon some of the structural changes which have been proposed even in the sector of school education. I will not cover everything pertaining to school education, but the major changes. The policy has recommended to switch over from 10+2 pattern to 5+3+3+4, covering age group 3 to 18. Currently, the children in the age group of 3 to 16 are not covered in 10+2 system of school education. And Professor Dalvi has already talked about it, that the first stage is going to be the foundational stage, the second one is going to be the preparatory stage, The third one is going to be middle stage. The fourth one is going to be the secondary stage. One can even deliberate upon it that what is the distinction between the foundational stage and the preparatory stage? Is the foundational stage not gelling with the preparatory stage? And once we have the foundational stage, do we still need a preparatory stage to move forward to the second stage of school education? The newly proposed structure of 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 amounts to drastic alteration of entire school structure from a 12-year schooling to 15 years of formal schooling. Currently, ECC is not a fundamental right. It is in the unorganized sector. There are a number of standalone institutions running the early childhood and care education program, and it has a lot of implications. If I have a school from grade 1 to grade 12, then I will have to add 3 more classes in my school, so which would require enormous amount of investment, additional human resources. Teacher preparation for the foundational stage, which is virtually non-existent in our country, will throw up new challenges, because presently persons with the conventional Bachelor of Education degree are handling these children. So there are a lot of implications relating to curricular provisions, pedagogical processes, administrative aspect, and financial aspect. Now, for the first time, in the policy we have talked about the universalization of school education. But universalization of school education without any constitutional commitment is only a pious statement. Policy has not talked about extension of the RT Act up to grade 12. So this is one thing which bothers me a lot. But I would like to say that if we miss this much desired goal now, then we miss it for another couple of decades. Insofar as assessment is concerned, the policy has talked about 360-degree multi-dimensional progress card for all students. I mean, the terminology which we have borrowed from the Western world, how are we going to do, leaves much to be desired. All students will take a school examination in grade 3, grade 5 and grade 8. But who is going to conduct it? Will the school be conducting it, or some other organization? Because the policy says that these examinations will be conducted by the appropriate authority. It's not clear what that appropriate authority is going to be in the policy. About the board examinations, they say that we will continue to have class 10th examination and class 12th examination, but the student will be given the opportunity to write the board examination more than one main examination and another for improvement. We will have National Assessment Center called PARAK, Performance Assessment Review and Analysis of Knowledge, etc. For the accreditation of a school, until now we do not have a system of assessment and accreditation at a school stage. The schools are assessed and accredited only by the magazines, the commercial establishments. But we do not have a formal structure of assessment and accreditation. The policy has for the first time talked about the assessment and accreditation of individual schools, but it is going to be self-regulatory mechanism. How it is going to happen is not clear in the policy. About teacher education, the policy says that the minimal qualification for entering into a school will be 4-year bachelor's degree in education, which is going to be a 4-year integrated program. But at the same time, they have said that while 2-year B.Ed will continue to be there for those who have already obtained bachelor's degree in other specialized subjects, provision would also be for 1-year B.Ed degree. So, I mean, we are going to have a 4-year integrated teacher preparation program. If you continue with a 2-year bachelor's degree, If you say that we will also have 1 year Bachelor of Education for those who have obtained master's degree and those who wish to enter into the teaching profession, then, I mean, making 1 year degree program, 2 year bachelor's degree program, 4 year integrated program in the same institution is going to create some kind of problem actually. Multidisciplinary institutions offering 4 year programs will also be allowed to offer the Bachelor of Education program through ODL mode, open and distance learning mode, if they are accredited to do so. So there are a lot of implications about it actually. Now, what are we doing? We are recommending a 4-year integrated model which is going on since early 60s through the regional institutes of education, institutions established under the aegis of the NCERT. Now, in the last 55 long years, this 4-year program has not gone beyond the boundaries of those 4 regional institutes of education. The 5th one was set up recently in Shillong. Now, without looking into the reasons as to why we have not been able to replicate this 4-year teacher preparation program in the rest of the country, I think is a very risky proposition. It should not amount to a stapling of 2 degrees. After grade 12. So, Justice Verma Commission had also recommended the same thing, and that commission was set up by none other than the Supreme Court. Supreme Court gave the direction, and Justice Verma Commission report was submitted to the Supreme Court in 2012. In the last almost 7.5 years, nothing has happened on the ground. So this is the problem when we reiterate some earlier recommendations without looking into the reasons for the non-implementation of those recommendations. Similarly, we have talked about the implementation of 3-language formula without again looking into the reasons for its non-implementation. 3-language formula has not been implemented in letter and spirit in our country since 1960. When it was agreed upon in a conference of the chief ministers of all the states that we are going to implement the 3-language formula. There is no clarity at all, in fact, insofar as 3-language formula is concerned, because on the one hand, policy says that 3-language formula will continue to be implemented. It is not being implemented. And secondly, they say that of the 3 languages, 2 languages should be the native Indian languages. Similarly, one would laugh at it actually. The another one is about the teaching of Sanskrit. They said that the Sanskrit will be taught as an optional subject at all stages of education. Now, if we are going to make Sanskrit as an optional subject, we cannot promote Sanskrit in our country. Sanskrit, the enrollment is falling everywhere. So we should look into the reasons as to why there is a steep decline in the enrollment in Sanskrit. And if we say that we are going to have Sanskrit as an optional language, then Sanskrit will not be promoted in that way. Now, let me come to the higher education. Policy has reiterated several earlier recommendations spanning over a period of 7 decades. In fact, some of the recommendations which were made by Radhakrishnan Commission of 1949, Kothari Commission of 1966, and by other commissions and committees like Yashpal Committee on Renovation and Rejuvenation of Higher Education, the National Knowledge Commission of Sam Pitroda, we have recommended a number of recommendations. We have reiterated a number of recommendations. Now, moving universities and colleges towards multidisciplinary universities and colleges is a good recommendation, but it is again a reiteration of the earlier recommendation. Policy says that all higher educational institutions will have to plan to become a multi-faculty institution of higher learning by 2030. So this has a huge implication for all such institutions which are not multi-faculty institutions of higher learning. And they will have to plan it. They will have to come up with the institutional development plan by 2030 according to the recommendation of the National Policy on Education. So it has got a bearing on the MGM Institute of Health Sciences that you will have to add some newer curricular provisions in your institution. Another important recommendation which is made in the policy is that all higher educational institutions shall aim to become multi-faculty by 2040. If you read between these two recommendations, it means that you must be ready with the institutional development plan by 2030, and by 2040 you will become a multidisciplinary institution. It's a welcome move. It will necessitate either closing of all single faculty institutions or upgrading them into multidisciplinary institutions. A large number of our public institutions are also not multidisciplinary institutions. And when they are going to transform themselves from the existing position to a multidisciplinary institution of higher learning, they would require enormous amount of resources. So that will be the implication. And if someone is not transforming, is not coming up with the institutional development plan by 2030 and does not convert into multidisciplinary institution by 2040, then it will have to be closed down, which would require greater amount of political commitment or substantial increase in earmarked resources, which are highly unlikely. So the policy also says that we will have at least one large higher educational institution in or near every district within 2030. That doesn't seem to be a credible recommendation, as it will accelerate inbreeding, it will also promote parochialism, and it will cut into the concept of pluralism, which provides inherent strength to an institution of higher learning. I think we need to look at it. We need to draw some lessons from the state of Andhra Pradesh, which some time ago had decided to have a university at each district. And if you see the profile of those universities now, you yourself will come to know the kind of parochialism, the kind of inbreeding that have happened on the campuses of those institutions. Another important recommendation in higher education, which the policy has made, is that we are going to have from now on only 3 types of institutions of higher learning. We'll have research intensive university, we'll have teaching intensive university, and we will have autonomous colleges with degree granting powers. And these autonomous colleges will primarily be focusing on undergraduate programs, but they may also evolve as a university, so that window is also available to them to graduate to a university. Now, a university will mean a multidisciplinary institution of higher learning which offers undergraduate, graduate and research programs of very high quality with community engagement. Since teaching and research have a symbiotic relationship, so classification of universities into a research university and a teaching university doesn't sound well, nor it cuts into the very concept of university. If you say that MGM Institute of Health Science in Aurangabad will only engage in teaching and not undertake any research, And MGMI Institute of Health Sciences in Navi Mumbai will undertake research how practical it is going to be. Universities are the social institutions. They have to create learning ambience within that social context. They have to look into the problems of the society and provide solutions to the society. How are they going to provide solutions if they are refrained from undertaking research and they are asked only to teach? See, the idea of a university is that university is a place where new knowledge is sought and freely transmitted. So how are we going to seek the new knowledge if we are not doing research? This is something which we need to understand. Granting autonomy to colleges, sorry, I mean, giving degree awarding powers to the colleges. Now you have 40,000 colleges in this country, and there are huge variations actually with regard to the curricular provision, the pedagogies, the infrastructure, the assessment methods. So without ensuring the parity across the colleges, it is going to have a serious implication actually, and it is going to adversely affect the children in the world of work. So this is something which we need to deliberate upon. If equivalence and parity of degrees are not ensured, then inter-colleges comparability will become a huge issue with its adverse impact on employability. You have a college, St. Stephen College or Hindu College in Delhi, St. Xavier College in Mumbai, Madras Christian College in Chennai, Presidency in Calcutta, which is now a Presidency University, but St. Xavier College is again there in Calcutta. These are very premier institutions. So how are we going to ensure the equivalence and parity of degrees granted by different sets of institutions when there are lots and lots of variations? This is one thing. The another thing, the policy has said that we are going to grant autonomy, it has talked about graded autonomy, which is against the very concept of autonomy. I mean, what do you mean by graded autonomy? Every institution of higher learning must be an autonomous institution in terms of designing the curriculum, transacting the curriculum, assessing the students' performance, autonomy with regard to what kind of programs do they wish to offer, autonomy of every kind actually. So that we will give graded autonomy, that is against the very concept of autonomy. Undertaking major recommendation in the policy is that we will be moving towards a more liberal, multidisciplinary undergraduate education, which will be of either 3 or 4 year duration with multiple exit options within this period. Now, what does it mean? It means that a student can leave after a year with a certificate, after 2 years with a diploma, after 3 years with a bachelor's degree, and after 4 years with a bachelor's degree with research. When we had switched over from 2-year undergraduate program to 3-year undergraduate program, we had taken that decision on the basis of empirical evidences. It was found out by Kothari Commission at that point in time that the children who are graduating from the schools are not ready for the university education. And at that time they had realized that they did not have the schools didn't have the capacity to adequately prepare them for the university education. And since the universities were better armed with enlightened faculty, they will be given the responsibility of preparing the children for the university education. So they will be spending 1 year on their preparation. And which is why we had switched over from 2-year undergraduate program to a 3-year undergraduate program insofar as liberal education was concerned. This time when we have decided to switch over from 3-year undergraduate program to 4-year undergraduate program, we are not driven on the basis of any empirical evidences. We seem to have copied it from the Western world, because the United States of America is having a 4-year undergraduate program, so we will also have a 4-year undergraduate program. This is one aspect of it. Let us look into this aspect. The another aspect is what is going to happen to the private institutions which solely depend upon the internal recoveries. They are not getting financial assistance from any quarters. It is only the tuition fees, wherefrom they generate their resources to pay the salaries to the teachers, to expand or to look after the infrastructure, create newer facilities. If 10 students are going to leave after 1 year, and if another 15 are going to leave after 2 years, and if another 10 or 15 are going to leave after 3 years with a bachelor degree, then what will happen? How are they going to make optimum use of the human and physical resources that they will have to create depending upon the intake capacity during the initial year of that program? So this is also going to have serious implications unless the state governments or the central government come forward and they say that yes, we are going to supplement your resources. So now the another thing is about that the entry to the PhD program will be either through master's program or through 4-year bachelor's degree with research. This also have this recommendation also has its own implications. There are very few institutions in our country present today which will be able to prepare a research-ready student after 4-year program, and therefore we'll have to be extremely careful whilst implementing this recommendation. If increase in duration to 4 years for the first degree will be a worthwhile idea only if provision of infrastructure, human resources, financial requirements, and curriculum updating along with quality of its transaction can be detailed and assured by both the union government and the state governments, as it will have substantial financial implications. Now, the another thing is that now I come down to the gross enrollment ratio. We have policy has recommended actually that there has been persistent concern to increasing access to higher education since independence actually, and that was the time in 1960-61. Many of you will be surprised to know that the gross enrollment ratio in higher education was only 1.5% in 1960-61. It was only in 2005-2006 when we had touched the double-digit mark of gross enrollment ratio in higher education, 11.6% in 2005-2006. Now we are about close to a little over 26% in higher education. Now the policy says that the gross enrollment ratio in higher education is to be increased to 50% over the next 10 years. Now achieving the goal of 50% gross enrollment ratio is a good destination to cover. It may not be difficult to achieve through dual mode because of various reasons that people are having very high aspirations and we have a large number of infrastructure that we have created in the last 70 years. But if we are going to increase the gross enrollment ratio to 50% without ensuring equity and quality, then we will not be able to create sustainable human resources. And mind you that 50% of the gross enrollment ratio in the age cohort of 18 to 23 in India would mean churning out a big number, which country's economy might not be able to absorb. If equity and quality do not go hand in hand, it will further widen inequalities that we already have. Laying greater emphasis on GER would alone not give a flip to the GDP. A large number of middle class population is financially stressed and cannot seek services beyond government institutions actually. If they go to private institutions, they are very expensive. So significant spike in gross enrollment ratio would warrant increase in number of scholarships both in public and private institutions. That is going to be another implication of it. Then there is an alarming fall in return to education. See, enrollment continues to take a dip at each level. From nearly 100% students at the primary level, then it plummets to 72% when they go to upper primary classes. It remains only 52% when they go to secondary, and it remains only 43% when they go to higher secondary, and only 26% to the higher education. The National Statistical Office reports show a clear decline in enrollment between 2014 and 2018. So it can be safely attributed as much a function of poor quality education and lack of interest as also sharply falling returns to education. I think we need to understand this issue very carefully. The employment rate is declining, and it is in our country that higher the qualifications, larger is the unemployment, greater is the unemployment actually. And it is more abysmal for those who are at the intersections of disadvantaged category. So 50% gross enrollment ratio is not a great idea because some countries have achieved it and therefore we should also achieve it. Insofar as the open and distance learning is concerned, the policy has recommended that all institutions will be allowed to offer the ODL programs provided they are accredited to do so. Now, blended approach is always good. We started it off in 1960 actually, when we were not able to expand the public institutions. So we started the correspondence courses in the name of open and distance learning. And now we have also come up with the online mode of delivery. University Grants Commission has already come up with a regulation in 2018, which allows the institutions of higher learning to offer 100% program through online mode. Policy has surprisingly made one recommendation that they are also going to set up the model public university for liberal education, which will be at par with IITs called MERUs, to reach the level of Ivy League. But what are going to be the contours of that MERU university is not clear from the policy document. And then my submission is that instead of creating classes of institutions, why should we not initiate action to ensure that all universities conform to the visualized model of public universities for liberal education that we have? For professional education, they have said that professional education should not take place in the isolation of one's specialty, which means that you will have to be a multidisciplinary institution. And professional education, therefore, should become an integral part of the overall higher education system. They have said that standalone agricultural universities, legal universities, health science universities, technical universities, shall aim to become multidisciplinary institutions. So there is a lot of emphasis on the multidisciplinary institutions of higher learning. The policy has not very categorically, like in the earlier drafts, they had said that the entire education will come under the overall umbrella of the Ministry of Education, but it is not clear from the final policy, and it looks that the health education, the legal education will continue to be under the domain of the Bar Council of India and Medical Council of India. Research seems to have caught the right attention of the policy, and the policy has come up with a recommendation that we are going to have the National Research Foundation, which will be funding research proposals on competitive basis. And the National Research Foundation is going to coordinate with other funding organizations in the country, like the Department of Earth Sciences and Department of Science and Technology, etc. The National Research Foundation will have to evolve mechanism to ensure that the research proposals are worthy of public funding. And the National Research Foundation, which is not mentioned there, but they should have mentioned that the National Research Foundation will also have the responsibility of identifying the priorities areas in different domains of knowledge, so as to avoid the duplication of efforts, so as to avoid the replication. Whatever is happening in other parts of the world will continue to happen here. About the faculty, the policy has recommended that we should have a robust and merit-based tenure track promotion and salary structure with multiple salary levels. It seems that it is going to be much more complex. Though the tenure track system will be good for teachers' accountability and maintenance of professional growth, but much will depend upon how the elements of these proposals would be worked out. And they should be worked out in consultation with the academics. Insofar as the performance of teachers is concerned, I am of the opinion that teachers' performance should be assessed on the basis of their duties and responsibilities and not through a straight-jacketed uniform criteria across institutions, because teachers are given different responsibilities to steer the affairs of the institution. Insofar as private education is concerned, policy has underscored the value of public-spirited private institutions with commitment to high-quality education. Promotion of private enterprises in higher education to support the efforts of the government is really the need of the hour. And if you look into the history of higher education in this country, right from 1947, high quality, or even much earlier, in 1909, when Jamshedji Tata had set up Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya set up Banaras Hindu University, Sir Syed Khan set up Aligarh Muslim University, and Thakur Rabindranath Tagore set up Shanti Niketan. The point that I am trying to make is that high quality higher education in this country has come through private initiatives in the past. And when they are saying that we will have a light but tight, I am not able to understand what would it mean, light but tight kind of regulatory mechanism. Private institutions, some of the private institutions like Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Health Sciences is maintaining good standards, but they are outnumbered by those known to exist largely with commercial orientation. And whilst increasing the gross enrollment ratio, we need to be concerned with falling enrollment both in private institutions and in public institutions. some private institutions are finding it extremely difficult to survive now. So, inconsiderate expansion of seats in higher education is going to give precedence to quantity over quality. Policy has also talked about internationalization of higher education, and they have said that our good institutions will be permitted to go beyond the boundaries of the country and set up their campuses offshore. And it has also said that we would also allow the top ranking institutions to set up their own campuses. I think we'll have to be very realistic about it. We have been talking about it, but none of the premier institutions of the world has shown any interest to come and set up the campus, though we have been talking about it since 2004. We do not have any legislative framework for top 100 foreign educational institutions to come and set up the campuses here. So the past experience is quite discouraging. Insofar as the use of technology is concerned, the policy has said that they are going to set up the National Education Technology Forum, which will be created for free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance everything in education, learning, planning, administration. And online I have already covered. About the regulatory mechanism, if you see, what is happening in our country actually. The other day I was sharing it with my colleague that we have been very, very consistent in our approach insofar as creation of newer institutions are concerned. We have not invested our time, energy and resources to strengthen the existing institutions. When we get disillusioned with our system, we think of creating a parallel system, which means that you are weakening the existing setup and you are not very sure of achieving the goal which you have in your mind. Like, we were not happy with the university system, so we decided to set up the premier institutions of higher learning. And the premier institutions of higher learning were offering only in a limited areas of knowledge. We were not happy with the universities when we were invaded by the technological advancements in early 90s, and because of the ambivalent attitude of the university system, the government of India decided to set up triple IITs. We were not happy with the universities to carry out research in basic sciences, in exact sciences and mathematics. So we decided to set up Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research. We are not happy with the University Grants Commission and the All India Council for Technical Education. And therefore, teacher education, we have decided now that we will have a Higher Education Commission of India as an overarching organization. They have been talking about it for a very long time. If you see the 2005 report of the National Knowledge Commission, or if you see 2008 report of Yashpal Committee, if you see the UPA 2, when Mr. Kapil Sibal had come up with the idea of setting up the National Commission for Higher Education and Research. Similarly, almost similarly, in this policy, we have come up with the idea that we will have Higher Education Commission of India. And this Higher Education Commission of India will have 4 verticals. One would be the National Accreditation Council. The another council would be the National Higher Education Regulatory Council. The third council will be the General Education Council, which will be looking into the setting up of standards. And the fourth council will be the Higher Education Grants Council. So there would be 4 verticals and there will be one Higher Education Commission of India. So I think we need to apply our mind more logically before we are going to create these parallel structures. The AICT will continue as a professional standard setting body. National Council for Teacher Education will also continue as a professional standard setting. We have got limited resources and yet we are deciding to create parallel structures. So people are enamored by this idea that we have been talking about it for a very long time, and the new policy has made this recommendation. But I think we will have to be very, very careful, because it is going to be extremely difficult to harmonize the activities of these multiple bodies working in the same sector. Insofar as effective governance is concerned, the policy has made a recommendation that board of governors will be constituted for each institution, and they will be empowered to govern the institution. Selection of the new members of the board of governors will be done by the board of governors itself. So once you pack up these board of governors by one set of people, they will never ever leave that institution. They will continue to appoint people of their ideology, and we are going to kill our institutions. This is a very dangerous proposition actually. I'm not averse to the idea of the societal engagement. The society must keep a watch, but not in the form that you create a parallel power center on the head of an institution. When you appoint the head of an institution, then you look into the credentials very well. And once you put a person in the position of authority as the head of the institution, then you must support him to the hilt. You must support her to the hilt once you appoint for a period of 3 years or 5 years. But if you are going to have a parallel power center there, that power center will not allow the chief executive of the institution to function. So this is something which leave. This is my personal opinion. You will pardon me. You will pardon me for that. But please think about it. Now, newer lessons. I think I have taken too long. But the newer lessons that we have learned from this COVID pandemic is that we are running a very hollow system. We are caught unaware by this pandemic, and we found ourselves so very indifferent. I mean, the framework of the education at the school level and higher education level turned out to be abysmally poor, that it couldn't withstand the pressure of this pandemic. Well-being must always remain a core goal of education, and education must develop the capacity amongst the people to stay strong in adversities. In times of crisis, humanity must take a precedence. Now, sadly, we have not been able to develop and design new methods of assessment during this pandemic, and we got into multiple avoidable standoffs. We should have wisely prioritized our goal and focused more on building a robust framework for remote learning rather than fighting academic battles in the court. Now, what is the way forward? We should now focus on creating and strengthening framework for remote teaching and learning. This is one lesson which we must learn from this pandemic. We need to plan to enable disadvantaged children to access remote learning. We also have to plan to bring back children to the campuses. How are we going to orient our teachers? Now, we need to organize massive faculty development program with a special focus on how to develop the e-courseware. I may be very good in creating the static content, but when it comes to transforming that static content into 4 quadrants, wherein I am supposed to provide visuals, supposed to provide simulations, supposed to provide questions and answers, I find myself very inadequate. And then I look towards a technocrat The technocrat does not know the content. He or she cannot decide what kind of simulation would be the most appropriate for the kind of content which is provided to me by the subject teacher. And therefore, these four capacities ought to be developed in individual learner, and for which, Professor Dalvi, I would request you, and for which esteemed Chancellor Sahab and the Pro-Chancellor, I would request to organize a special orientation program for the faculty of MGM Institute of Health Sciences. How to harness technology for development of the cognitive learning outcomes, the affective learning outcomes, and the psychomotor learning outcomes. How to integrate values based on universal perception and values based on constitutional imperatives, actually. We have been talking about values, and values have to be central to education for all the time. But now they need to move from implicit aspirations to explicit aspirations. That is the point that I wanted to make. It is necessary to create good human beings as envisaged in National Education Policy 2020, but a mere statement कि हमें महामानव की संरचना करनी है, you cannot create महामानव like that. So technology will now remain an integral part of future teaching and learning. I mean, the teachers are not used to talking to the electronic devices. They are not used to talking to the people without looking into their eyes. They are not used to talking to the children without ascertaining who is listening and who is not listening. Even in this platform, I mean, I am seeing Dr. Chandrasekhar, I am seeing Professor Dalvi here on the screen, but Professor Chandrasekhar, with a click of a mouse, can unmute himself, can stop his video and go away and have a cup of tea with his wife. And his name will still figure there on the screen. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that we need to embrace technology in a big way. The challenge is to use technology for making learning more interesting, more inspiring, competitive, global, besides relating to it to social and physical realities. And it is for that reason that there is an urgent need for curricular and pedagogical reform at all stages of education. There has to be a curricular shift from routine cognitive development to higher order critical thinking, problem solving, and entrepreneurial abilities. All policies commencing from 1913 actually. The first policy we had in this country was developed in 1913, and then in 1968, and then in 1986, 1992 revised, and now in 2020. We have been talking about this, that we should promote critical thinking, problem solving, entrepreneurial abilities, but no document of ours talks about how to do it. When we organize the faculty orientation programs, even in the faculty orientation program, we never ever talk about these abilities, which are extremely essential for effective teaching and learning. And in order to avoid duplication of efforts, I mean, there is a need to collaborate and institutionalize best practices and designing curriculum, e-courseware, pedagogical process and assessment techniques, and digital platform. If it is done, then students from anywhere can have access to quality education. So this crisis requires collaboration of a different order across the universities, across the governments, and across the technological companies. While universities need to launch a massive operation to develop online educational resources, governments, the union government and the provincial government, they need to scale up broadband connectivity and support disadvantaged groups, and technological companies need to help institutions to create platform. Policy is a very important document for us. We must read every word of it and try to understand implications of every statement of intent that the policy contains. We should not join the mob of, creating euphoria about the policy. I think we have to look into the implications, and we have to find out the way, how are we going to, if there is a recommendation, which we have reiterated in 1968, then reiterated 1964, 68, 86, and we are again reiterating it in 2020. So unless we look into the reasons for the non-implementation of that recommendation, we are not going to make any headway. So I would suggest, Honorable Chancellor, to you and Pro-Chancellor, Dr. Nitin Kadam, to set up a task force actually in your own institution to carry out something that is missing in the policy. And let me tell you what is missing in the policy. The policy does not contain a critical analysis of any sector. Where do we stand in terms of early childhood and care education? Where do we stand in terms of elementary education? Where do we stand in terms of higher education? Policy doesn't talk what is that has worked in the last 70 years and what is that has not worked in the last 70 years. Policy doesn't talk, policy has talked to some extent where do we want to reach in 10 years from hence or 5 years from hence in terms of physical targets, that institutional development plans have to be ready by 2030 and that all institutions will have to convert themselves into multidisciplinary institutions by 2040 and that the gross enrollment ratio in higher education has to be 50% by in another 10 years. But policy has not identified the guiding principles when we move forward. So without any further weight from the central government or from the state government, as a premier institution of higher learning, my earnest request to you, Honorable Chancellor Sir, and Honorable Pro-Chancellor Sir, and my esteemed colleague, Professor Dalvi Sir, is to constitute a group to look into the policy implications and prepare an institutional development plan. And that plan should be deliberated upon by the board of management of your esteemed institution to move forward, so that you do not receive any communication from the light but tight regulatory authorities. And when you receive it, you can happily say that yes, we have already done it. So this is how you can make an edge over others. Now, for policy endorsement, the last point that I would like to make here is endorsement and reiteration should not become a trend with the policy formulation. This has been the trend. We talked about three-language formula in 1960, we talked about it in 1968, we reiterated in 86, now we again reiterated in 2020. So, based on that critical analysis, you should develop your own action plan for the implementation of the national education policy. You can never have a perfect document. Let me say that. I can come up with a critique, but if I am asked to write a newer document, that will also suffer from a number of inadequacies. This is the problem with education. Because in education, no one has been able to articulate quality, because quality is a social construct. And being a social construct, it remains a moving target. The bar automatically goes up and up and up and up. So policy implementation strategies must reflect all those concerns, and without any further weight, I think we should do that. So, I could have taken more time, but I think there is a limited span of attention of the audience. I would like to close here. And if you have questions, I have not touched upon certain aspects which are very, very critical. I am not undermining their significance, like vocationalization of education, three-language formula, teacher education. But if you have questions on them, I would be more than happy to respond to those questions as well. With this, please allow me to express my very sincere thanks and gratitude to the Honorable Chancellor, Kamal Kishore Kadamji, to the Pro-Chancellor, Professor Nitin Kadamji, and my esteemed colleague, Professor Shashank Dalvi, for giving me this opportunity to talk to you on the National Education Policy 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your very, very informative address.
Before starting the question and answers, I would like to have some comments from Dr. Chandrasekhar Shetty, sir. You want to make any comment, feedback, as you have joined? Dr. Dubhashi is there, Dr. N.J. Pawar is there, the Vice Chancellor from Pune.
How can I comment about Professor Ved Prakash Ji's such an analytical
Interaction
lecture?
and feedback, sir. Please, sir.
No, only high appreciation for the totally analytical actually and comments on that, no comments, because we have been involved in these discussions for the last more than 2 years. I think first time we get such a wonderful analytical lecture. Only my high appreciation to and Professor Ved Prakash Ji. Very well done, sir. Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Dubhashi, sir, you want to ask any question?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be again a part of the deliberations of the MGM family. And it's a pleasure to listen to the luminary, Professor Ved Prakash Ji. Thank you for giving us the insights into the various issues and especially making the recommendations of that task group which is there. Of course, the only issue which needs to be deliberated upon with the health science institutions, yes, we have the other dental council, nursing councils, but with reference to the medical education, we already have the National Medical Education coming into existence, which itself has its 4 pillars of the UG, the PG, the accreditation, and then the ethical standing, the ethics issues. And now this Higher Education Commission will also have this particular accreditation council which is there. So how are they going to work in, are they complementary to each other? They are supposed to work in tandem. What is the implication of this? That is some point for discussion.
Yeah, you want me to respond?
Yes.
The policy is completely silent on that aspect. See, the problem which we have not been able to overcome in our country is that we have fragmented education so poorly in this country that you have health university, as if in health university you do not have to teach physics and chemistry and biology. You have engineering technical universities, as if you don't have to teach physics, mathematics and chemistry there and language. You have teachers university, you have children university. I mean, we have made mockery of ourselves. The meaning of university is a place where universal knowledge exists. And in today's time, when people have been talking about giving up the Humboldtian model, when we had created the structures of disciplines in the name of physics and chemistry and geology and botany and history and geography, people talk about dissolving the boundaries between the disciplines. So, I mean, we have not learned it from the Western world. I mean, the only thing we have learned is that the global ranking of the universities. We have not learned how have they reached where they are today. So there is no clarity insofar as professional education is concerned. In the past, the efforts were made to bring education under one umbrella, but because of some constitutional provisions and because of the fight amongst the individuals, that no, I'm not going to permit you to encroach upon my territory. But they consider education as their own territory, and which is why we have not been able to do it. It's very unfortunate. As if, I mean, the agriculture education is altogether a different world. You don't have to teach language in agriculture university. You don't have to teach science. You don't have to teach geography. You don't have to teach marketing in agriculture science in agriculture university. What is it? I mean, So this is the most unfortunate thing. In the initial draft, in the draft it was mentioned actually, but in the final document of the policy, which is of 63 pages, that has disappeared again like a helicomet. So this is the problem actually. I do not know when the time will come when we will consider education as a core domain of knowledge.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your very informative and analytical address. In fact, on the chat box, it's very well appreciated by all participants, and most of the questions are like it's a very analytical and appreciated by everybody. You have touched almost all aspects and difficulties in implementation, sir. So we have clubbed couple of the questions because the constraints of time. I think we'll just ask you a few questions.
But I have one question.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I'm Professor Pawar from Dr. D.Y. Patil Vidyapit, Pune.
Okay.
It was very enlightening talk which is given by you on very good analysis of the NEP 2020. Since all of us are now, MGM is a deemed university, Dr. D.Y. Patil Vidyapit is also deemed to be university. And therefore, there's one provision which is made in NEP 2020. And that is in terms of abolition of a complex nomenclature of the universities.
Yeah.
Like private university, deemed to be universities, then we have central universities, we have state universities, so on and so forth. Now, all of us have interest in having a common nomenclature, which is also a thought which exists almost in all deemed to be universities, because there's some implications of this particular nomenclature which we receive from abroad, because people don't understand what is deemed to be university and private and whatnot.
Certainly.
So I personally don't know as to how this particular aspect will be implemented in the policy. Will there be some legal complications, because deemed to be universities are under Act of Parliament, private universities are in different states with state private university acts, and therefore what will be the implication in implementation of this in terms of bringing the uniformity, self-financed universities and government-financed universities, if we go by that in implementation as a classification, two-stage classification. So what will be the legal complications? That is one thing. And secondly, I have one more query, is in terms of, see, there are 90% students are in the state universities. They are actually learning in the state universities, whereas they are the universities which are very large site universities. And therefore, for example, if I take an example from Pune University, there are 7.5 lakh students in Pune University and more than 850 colleges.
Yeah.
Now, this policy envisages to have autonomous degree giving colleges. Once we give this recognition based on the NAC accreditation, etc., what will be the implication in terms of implementation of this aspect on the financial position of the state universities? Because these are the universities where mostly poor students, they take education to a great extent. And therefore, what will be the finance? Because, you know, the state universities have only two sources of finance or financial resources generation. One is some surplus is generated in the examination, and secondly, some surplus is generated through affiliation system, that is affiliation fees. If these two go away, then there will be a lot of implications on the financial position of this large state universities. Please. Thank you very much.
So let me answer the second question first. The answer to your second question is that you don't have to worry. Nothing is going to happen. We will be reiterating it again after 20 years or 30 years when we come up with the new next policy. Okay. Neither the state has the resources to support the state universities, nor the center has those kinds of resources that you convert all the 800 colleges of Pune University into autonomous degree granting colleges and make Pune University as a unitary university. and the unitary university will survive on the internal recovery without the state government support and the central government support. That is not going to happen. You would have also realized this kind of support which these universities have received from RUSA now. The support which was coming initially has badly depleted. So this will not happen. The first question, they will have to make changes in the legislative framework which we have. You have rightly said that the deemed universities are established through an executive order of the Ministry of Human Resource Development under Section 3C of, Section 3 of the UGC Act. So that classification, Professor Pawar, will continue to be there, formally or informally. And we will continue to create the kind of confusion which we have, for which we are known. So we will not give up the legacy. We will continue with that legacy, which is very unfortunate. We have come up rather with one more classes of institution, that is institution of eminence.
Yeah.
You must have also applied for that. You must have also applied for that. Okay, and if you have not applied, you are going to apply again for that. So that will remain. See, a university is a university, whether it is created through an act of state legislature or through an act of central legislature. We have only made that kind of a classification that we call the central universities and the state universities. The role and functions of a central university and the state universities, and also the deemed to be university, and also the institution of national importance, and also the institution of eminence, are absolutely identical. Absolutely identical. So, I mean, it's a doable proposition. It can be done actually. It can be done, but we will not do it. At least in our time, in your time and my time. You may be younger to me. Probably you will see it. You will see it in your lifetime. But I don't think that in my lifetime I would be able to see it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Another question, Professor Nitin Kadam sir.
Yeah, there's one more question from Professor Sudhir Gawane, who is the Vice Chancellor of MGM University, Aurangabad. Dr. Sudhir Gawane, can you?
Yeah. Professor Ved Prakash sir, heartfelt thanks for very critical analysis which was needed in the lot of drum playing across the country about this new education policy that has been described as a revolutionary or something like that. But you have reached to the roots of the ground realities, and I appreciate that. As you have come from the rural background and the farmer's family background, you have a connect with the roots of the society. So that reflected in your analysis. Congratulations for that. My question is, this policy says that all affiliated colleges, which you just talk about with Honorable Pawar sir was mentioning, that converting all those constituent colleges, affiliated colleges into constituent colleges of the respective universities of that region. So some of them may become degree awarding, but most of them, 80% of them, they are not having the grants from the government. They are having poor infrastructure. Faculty is not adequate enough, not competent enough. And this liability, financial liability, managerial liability is going to come to the university. So you are saying we are doing away with the affiliation, but you are creating a constituent colleges, a bunch of constituent colleges added to the burden of the state university, mostly they are, and the state governments are not in position to support them. They have a financial crunch. Universities are having financial crunch. Is it workable and viable? Suggestion. So by next 12, 15 years, we'll be able to do this. I think it's impossible. Number two, my question is 6% of GDP allocation for the education. That is also, I personally feel it is impossible, because the recovery of the economy after COVID and before COVID, it will take another 5-6 years to come to the normalcy. And after that, you are making, allocation of 6% of GDP, which has not happened. And during last 10-15 years, if you minutely see, the percentage is going down, GDP percentage to the education. So in this situation, is it possible when states are crunching financially, they are into reaching out to the difficulties, huge debt they are having, do they have this priority on education, and are they able to allocate resources required for this 6%? And you say impossible, I personally feel. What is your say, sir, about this?
Okay. Let me answer the first question very differently. I did talk to you about the 4 approaches to policy making. I do not know whether it caught your attention or not. Let me repeat it once again. One is the spurious approach, wherein you use flowery language, raise questions, but come out with answers which can easily be manipulated. The another approach is the unprincipled approach, wherein you raise questions and come out with answers that suits the dispensation. Okay? And the third approach is the typical administrative approach, which is little known to the political executives and little known to the academia, wherein all possible questions are raised, all fascinating answers are provided for, knowing it fully well that neither the political will nor the economy will support them. And the fourth approach is the genuine approach, wherein you raise questions, all possible questions, find answers based on empirical evidences, which are in sync with the grassroots realities, and extend honest support to make them happen. So indirectly I will answer, this is my answer to your first question. I leave it to you to do some homework and find out the answer from these, that which approach is followed by the policy formulators out of these 4. To the second question, Dr. Kothari had recommended that we must spend 6% of the GDP on education in a phased manner, and by 1986 we should be able to hit that 6% mark. He had said it in 1966 when he submitted the report. Now, at that time, Professor Sudhir, the size of the education was not as gigantic as it is today.
In terms of numbers.
If you put both school education and higher education together.
Like a problem.
And we still keep talking about 6% of the GDP. And we are less than 4% actually. We are spending less than 13% of the total budget on education and less than 4%, 3.86% on education. We are spending only 0.68% of the GDP on research.
Yeah.
And we want to compete with the United States of America and Germany and France. Okay. All the time we will say that whenever there would be the report of the Times Higher Education Supplement Global Ranking or QS ranking, we will say that none of our universities has figured in the first 100 or first 200 or first 300. Today there was a report in the Hindustan Times actually about it, that none of our universities has figured in the first 300 in the global ranking. I mean, many people do not know that what kind of parameters are employed for the purposes of global ranking. And those parameters do not fit in our own context.
Our own system, yeah.
Okay. So we will not be in a position, because the government I said about the typical administrative approach of formulating the policy. Then we will say, safely we will say, and I have faced it when I was working in the government, that the economy is not growing. Economy has not grown along the line of our expectations, so we cannot give you that much money. So the allocated budget will never ever be provided to the individual institution because of that problem. So I'm quite skeptical. I would be very happy actually. I would go rather a step further, that we had computed that 6% of the GDP at that point in time. GDP was also smaller, number of institutions was also smaller, but now both have grown up exponentially. GDP has also grown exponentially. The number of institutions has also grown up exponentially. I think there is a need, Professor Sudhir, to constitute a group to ascertain the quantum of resources we really require for strengthening our education at a school and higher education level actually. We must undertake a separate exercise. I had undertaken this exercise in 2005 when I had constituted a Tapas Majumdar committee, which had given us the total the amount that would have required in 2005 to touch 6% GDP mark. It was done at the instance of the government of India. I was asked by the Ministry of Human Resource Development at that point in time, but that has not materialized. So I think a fresh exercise must be undertaken to identify the quantum of resources that would be really required. And you will have, see, when you are asking private institutions to transform themselves into multidisciplinary institutions, all those institutions would not be able to transform themselves without financial support. So government should come up with a newer model through which they should also support the private institutions. Here we have reservations actually, that we will not provide any financial assistance to the private institutions, though the private institutions are doing the job of the government. So that's my answer to that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Almost answered all questions, and if any other questions are there, we'll take sir's advice on the email. So over to Dr. Rita Khadkekar for Chancellor's address.
Professor Nitin Kadam, yes, I would like to request Professor Dalvi. Yes. I had written a piece on the national education policy which I had shared with Professor Dalvi.
Yes, I am circulating in my staff.
Those who are interested, actually,
yeah,
they can write to me. I will forward it to them happily.
No problem. We will forward, sir. Yeah.
And I mean, though in the newspaper there is always the problem of space, but I have fairly covered the different aspects of the national education policy through that piece. And if that can be circulated amongst the fellow colleagues, it will be of some value to them.
Yeah, sure.
Professor Prakash sir, can we include your article into e-book which we are publishing day after? There is a critical analysis of the NEP only, that is the e-book by MGM only. So we request you to give us the permission to include that paper into that. I can get it from the professor.
This was carried by, I do not know what is the procedure. From my side, there is no problem. Actually, it is already in the public domain.
Okay.
And this was carried by the Guardian newspaper. I think it was carried by Sunday Guardian. So if there is any requirement, you can write a letter to them and you can publish. I have not taken any honorarium from anybody for that.
That's okay, sir, because it is your copyright, your article, it's your copyright.
So if the copyright rests with me, I give you the copyright.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Now over to Dr. Rita Khadkekar for the Chancellor.
Thank you for sharing your views, sir. We will now invite Honorable Chancellor, sir, Dr. Kamal Kishore Kadam ji, former Education Minister, Government of Maharashtra, and Chairman of MGM Trust. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Richa. Thank you, Professor Ved Prakash. Wonderful review and critical analysis of the policy document of education. Document is good. Every document, every government document is good. The problem is with implementation. Much is talked about autonomy of university. But is it possible? Free thought, free thinking, and free action is the base of the university foundation. We cannot afford. Even today, for a single post of lecturer, you have to go to government. For any new faculty, you have to take permission of government. Now and then, there is the interference of government. Without government, university cannot function is a fact. The reason, Purusho Arthasya Dasah, Vidyapit Arthasya Dasah. जब तक तुम अपने पैरों पे खड़े नहीं हो, तो न यूनिवर्सिटी ने ऑटोनॉमी की बात करना, और गवर्नमेंट तो देती ही नहीं। इस समस्या से हम कैसा हल करें, यह हमारे सामने सबसे बड़ी बात है। शिक्षा का प्रश्न रहा तो मैं सोचता हूं बहुत कमीशन आए गए, बहुत लर्नड फेलो, डॉक्टर राधाकृष्णन, डॉक्टर DS कोठारी, लाइकवाइज कोशिश बहुत की, लेकिन बहुत कम, उसमें से बहुत कम हम पा सके। मैं सोचता हूं देश के सबसे बड़े शिक्षा तज्ञ विनोबा भावे थे, आचार्य विनोबा भावे, जिन्होंने कहा शिक्षा से हम खाली दो चीज चाहते हैं, एक बौद्धिक स्वावलंबन और दूसरा आर्थिक स्वावलंबन। बौद्धिक स्वावलंबन का मतलब मैं मेरे लिए कौन सी चीज अच्छी है, मेरे हित में है, मेरे परिवार के लिए कौन सी चीज अच्छी है, मैं जिस समाज में रहता हूं उसके लिए कौन सी अच्छी चीज है, जिस देश में रहता हूं देश के लिए हितकारक धोरण क्या होगा, और पूरे दुनिया के मानव समाज के लिए क्या है। ये सोच समझ करने की क्षमता अगर शिक्षा ने आपको दी तो आपके अंदर बौद्धिक क्षमता, बौद्धिक स्वावलंबन आ गया, ऐसा आप समझ सकते हो। दूसरी बात आर्थिक स्वावलंबन। हम हमारे जवानी के 15-20 साल शिक्षा लेने में डालते हैं, 10वीं पास हो गई, आगे का अरे यूनिवर्सिटी चलो, आगे क्या रे और पढ़ो, आगे का रो BA करो, फिर MA करो, फिर PhD करो, फिर हाथ में नौकरी का पर्चा लेके दर दर घूमो। हमें श्रम करने की लज्जा पैदा हो गई। हम तो बड़े पढ़ाई लिखे वाले हो गए, PhD हो गए, अभी हम कुछ नहीं करना चाहते। तो शिक्षा ने हमें क्या दिया? Dignity of labor we could not maintain. Neither dignity of labor nor actual intelligence और actual बुद्धिमत्ता जो कहते हैं वो भी हमारे पास नहीं है। अब इस हालत में इस शिक्षा को कैसा सुधारें?
एक शिक्षा का वर्णन भी उन्होंने बहुत अच्छा किया है। आज की शिक्षा शब्द को प्रतिशब्द देना, यही शिक्षा है। छात्र ने पूछा शिक्षक से, सर अश्व का मतलब क्या है? शिक्षक कहता है अश्व यानी घोड़ा। घोड़े का मतलब क्या है? घोड़ा यानी अश्व। अरे आप शब्द को प्रतिशब्द देखकर उसका समझ यह नहीं कर सकते। अश्व यानी घोड़ा और घोड़ा यानी अश्व ये नहीं है तो उसे अश्वशाला ले जाइए, उसे घोड़ा ये जानवर बताइए, उसके ऊपर से हाथ घुमाइए, हो सका तो उसके ऊपर बैठ के एक रपेट लगाइए, वो कैसा भागता है क्या है। जिंदगी भर घोड़ा नहीं भूलेगा, उसको अश्व और घोड़ा ये बताने की नहीं जरूरत। लेकिन आज हमारी पूर्ण शिक्षा प्रणाली जो है अब इसी के बीच में घूम रही है। शब्द को प्रतिशब्द जो कम से कम जो उसकी छोटी उम्र है उसके अंदर तो भी उसका संपूर्ण समाधान करना एक जरूरी है। जब तक वो हम नहीं कर सकेंगे हमारी शिक्षा प्रणाली में से, तो ये शिक्षा प्रणाली से कोई उपयोग होने वाला है। हम नहीं कहते हैं कि उसको आइंस्टाइन की थियरी ऑफ रिलेटिविटी समझा, लेकिन जो चीज आप समझा सकते हैं वो भी चीज हम नहीं समझाते। साहब, किताब की नदी डुबाती नहीं है और किताब की कश्ती बचाती नहीं है, तो उसके लिए प्रत्यक्ष जीवन के अनुभव की जरूरी है। लेकिन अब हमारे हुए जितने भी ग्रेजुएट हो, पोस्ट ग्रेजुएट हो, पीएचडी हो, ये सब उनकी कितनी काम की है अब उन्होंने जांचने का वक्त आ गया है। और उसी के जिम्मे हम ये पूरी हमारी नए जनरेशन दे रहे हैं। और ये पॉलिसी से, और आपने जैसे अभी बताया 86 में कमीशन आ गया, डॉक्टर राजा खन्ना, द वेरी लर्नेड फिल्म। उनके बाद DS कोठारी। यस कोठारी कमीशन में तो देश विदेश के 60 शिक्षण तज्ञों का समावेश था, मोर देन 60। वो लोगों ने डॉक्यूमेंट किया। उसके बाद में और 86 में टर्निंग पॉइंट समथिंग लाइक दैट, और एक डॉक्यूमेंट आ गया। डॉक्यूमेंट के ऊपर डॉक्यूमेंट आ रहे हैं, लेकिन हमारी विनोबा जी का जो अपेक्षा थी उसमें बौद्धिक स्वावलंबन करो या उसको आर्थिक स्वावलंबन, वो दो चीजें हम अभी तक शिक्षा में से पा नहीं रहे। आपने आपके इसमें बताया कि बेरोजगारों की फौज बढ़ रही है, कतारें लग रही है, काम नहीं है, मेहनत का काम करने के लिए उनको शर्म महसूस हो। तो इस सब के बारे में एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव सोच होनी चाहिए और उसके ऊपर विचार होना चाहिए। मैं सोचता हूं कि आपने बहुत अच्छा क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस किया आज के डॉक्यूमेंट का। अब उससे एक नई सोच पैदा हो जाए। हम लिखते तो बहुत है, ये होना चाहिए, वो होना चाहिए, वो होना चाहिए, लेकिन आपने जैसा बताया कि GDP का 6% एजुकेशन पे खर्चा करना, ये हम जैसे अर्थशास्त्र के गवार को भी समझता है ये नामुमकिन है। लेकिन एक सपना बता रहे हो कि 6% हम खर्चा करने जाने वाले हैं, वो कभी खर्चा होने वाला नहीं है। और ये जो आज की स्थिति है उसमें और ज्यादा से ज्यादा बिगाड़ आने की कोशिश हम सब मिलकर कर रहे हैं। तो आपने आके इसके ऊपर जो एनालिसिस किया, वो critical analysis you made, you opened our eyes. Your speech was eye-opener on this new policy. I thank you very much, Ved Prakash ji. Thank you very much. I conclude.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts. I now invite Dr. Parinita Samant, Joint Controller of Examination, to give the vote of thanks and make the closing remarks. Welcome.
Dr. Dalvi,
Yes, sir. I am hearing, sir. Yes.
Good evening, all. I feel honored and privileged to get an opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of MGMIHS. We are deeply grateful to Professor
What
Ved
next?
Prakash. We are deeply grateful to Professor Ved Prakash Ji, former chairman of UGC MHRD, Government of India, for gracing this webinar as eminent speaker. Sir, we are I deeply appreciate your precious time you have spared for this webinar, and your talk here today has motivated and inspired all of us. Our heartiest thanks to Honorable Chancellor MGMIHS and Chairman MGM Trust, Shri Kamal Kishore Kadam Ji, sir. We are fortunate to have your presidential address for this webinar on education policy. I would like to express my profound gratitude to our Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Shashank Dalvi, sir, for sparing his valuable time for the most awaited webinar. I must express my deep gratitude to Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Nitin Kadam sir for moderating this seminar. His participation has enhanced the importance of this webinar and inspired us. I must thank Honorable Chancellor of MGM University, Aurangabad, Dr. Baburao Kadam. My sincere thanks to Dr. PM Jadhav sir, Vice Chairman MGM Trust. My big thank from the bottom of my heart to all the Pro-Chancellor, Vice Chancellors of eminent universities. I will take name of few. Dr. Praveen Shingare, Pro-Chancellor KIMS Pune, Dr. Chandrasekhar Shetty, Vice Chancellor from Adi Chanchandgiri University, Dr. Jairaj, Vice Chancellor, Pravra Institute of Medical Sciences, Pune. Dr. Vivek Sauji, Vice Chancellor, KLE Belgaum, Dr. Shirish Patil, Vice Chancellor, DY Patil, Navi Mumbai, Dr. NJ Pawar, Vice Chancellor, DY Patil, Pune, Dr. Rakesh Mugdal, Vice Chancellor, DY Patil, Kolhapur, Dr. Sudhir Gawane, Vice Chancellor, MGM University, Aurangabad. In addition to that, I would like to extend my thanks to Dr. Prakash Doke sir from Bharatiya Vidyapit and ex-medical superintendent of MGM Hospital, Dr. Siddharth Dubashi from AIIMS Nagpur, and sir was also associated with us in past. And to all the eminent board of members for attending this webinar. Participation of all of you itself has shown keen interest in adoption the change in the education policy today for better future in education. I express my special thanks to Registrar MGMIHS Dr. Rajesh Goyal and Deputy Registrar Dr. Rajesh Kadam for being initiators of this webinar. My sincere thanks to the respected Deans Dr. G.H. Shetty, MGM Medical College, Navi Mumbai, and Dr. R.B. Bora, MGM Medical College, Aurangabad. Finally, I would like to thank faculty members of MGMIHS of different constituent colleges and other participants for their overwhelming response to this webinar. I also thank IQAC coordinator MGMIHS Dr. Rita Khadkikar for her efforts in hosting this webinar. Also IQAC coordinator from Aurangabad Dr. Swati Shiradkar. And not last but the least, I would like to thank all IT team members, especially Mr. Anil Khandare and university staff for their extensive support. Lastly, I want to thank everyone who contributed directly and indirectly in making this webinar successful. Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. And now I declare this webinar concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you. I conclude.